Welcome to the Simply Real Life podcast. I'm Sarah, the founder of Simply Real Health, here to help you simplify, amplify, and elevate your life. This show is for those of you who want the real talk on how to live a more intuitive and intentional life, a life that's healthy from the inside out, and one that feels more effortless, aligned, simple, and more alive. We cover it all, from health, wellness, mindset, motherhood, daily habits and rituals, to business and relationships, creativity and growth, and tiny tricks to feeling your best, and the energetics behind it all filled with personal stories, unfiltered conversations, and of course, answering all of your burning questions, all in the way of simplicity and keeping it real, so that you can create your own version of your healthiest life. Let's do it. Oh, you guys, thank you so much for all of the love and the excitement and the encouragement and checking in on me these last couple of weeks after sharing the biggest and most exciting news, and also sharing with you the long journey that it has been to finally be able to say that we've got baby number 3 coming our way. So after I share the news, I just have to tell you all that it feels so nice to not be keeping that secret anymore. It felt so hard and so extra long. Everything about this process feels long for me. I always laugh and I hate when people are like, oh, with your 3rd kid, you won't even notice. Time flies. It's going to happen so fast. And then you'll just have the baby. I'm like, yeah, right. Maybe for more normal pregnancies that are not like mine, but I truly feel every hour of it, every day. And so much of the process is hard, feeling like you're in hiding, like it's this secret, not really even to keep a secret. I did actually think about sharing this much sooner, but more so because of just my own energy and capacity. Even if I wanted to have shared this any earlier, I couldn't have. I just have been so completely flat on my back in bed. I had no capacity to even be looking at a phone, looking at a screen, thinking about recording anything. My brain just felt like a big pile of mush. So I just wanted to tell you all thank you for being patient and also coming along for this ride. It's very intense, I think, to share the journey, but there's part of it that is also really healing and helpful for me to talk about it. And I know because of the messages that so many of you have sent, private DMs and messages, how it was so helpful for you to hear an experience that is not blissful, shall we say, and not easy and not just the exciting parts, but more like the real parts, pregnancy aside, just the real parts of life that we all go through these seasons that can be extremely hard and extremely challenging in every way, like down to every fiber of your being. You feel challenged. And I think that's something that we all can relate to in a lot of different areas of life, or just transitions in life that we have. We get this opportunity to know ourselves deep down. And that's definitely what this season has been like. So I know I was a little bit vague on some of the details. One, because I think part of my brain is starting to block it out as a trauma response, I'm sure. And 2, because I don't want to overwhelm anyone. This is a very intense experience of hyperemesis. But I also know that in sharing it, so many other women have come forward and said, thank you for talking about this. Like, thank you for sharing that this exists and raising awareness around it, that this is not just pregnancy nausea. And the more people can know and understand, they're like, I've sent your episode to so many family and friends if they had hyperemesis themselves, or even if you know people in your life that maybe one day will experience it, that they can feel less alone in hearing a story like mine. And also knowing how to maybe help or support someone in your life that is going through a really hard, physically challenging time. We'll just leave it at that. So after I did share, there was a lot of questions that came in that I thought would be worth sharing some of the answers to and just reflections on, both because of the physical challenges that this particular pregnancy has been, but also the mental and emotional hurdles that it's been. And There was a lot of questions on how did you get to deciding that you wanted to go from 2 to 3 kids? What was that process like? And I briefly talked about it, praying a lot and journaling a lot and having some very honest talks with myself. But when I sat down to think about it, there were a couple of extra things that I found helpful or that I did. So we're going to cover all of that today, and as well as some other funny questions that came in, which I love. So let's just jump right in. The first question I got, which I think is probably really important to answer, is how did you know that this was hyperemesis gravidarum, otherwise known as HG? So this is a very specific condition just in pregnancy. It happens to about 3% of women. I knew from my experience last pregnancy with my daughter, because I also had it then, that I almost knew immediately down to the day that it would probably most likely start to happen if it was going to happen again. So, and that is about a week and a half after finding out I was pregnant. So I knew that at around 5.5 weeks gestation for me. So, for 1 week, you have a couple days to feel excited. And then there's also this panic moment because it's happened to me again that I needed to prepare almost everything in my life to be able to be down for the count for 4 to 5 months. Knowing that, biggest experience was last time, kind of knowing the signs and signals, but just so that you all know and what that looks like and how this is so different than just normal first trimester nausea and feeling tired or feeling sick or not like yourself. All of those are very normal parts, especially first trimester in pregnancy. But with HG, some of the main signs and signals that something may be completely next level is that you cannot keep any food down. It will come on strong. So for me, it was about 5.5 weeks, and it has a tendency to hit earlier than most pregnancy nausea, which is usually maybe around 7 or 8 weeks. So this will hit around weeks 5 or 6. And it is so intense, the amount of the rejection of any type of food or any type of liquid into your body. I remember in the beginning going through this experience the first time, you're trying all the things, anti-nausea bands, acupuncture, you're trying to drink ginger tea and have ginger chews and do all of the things that you hear, quote unquote, helps relieve nausea. But there's nothing that relieves this type of nausea. There's no food that sounds good or will stay down, not crackers, not anything, not the most basic, the most plain, not even a piece of toast will stay down. And it usually goes for a couple of days where you are throwing up so excessively that it's just stomach acid because there's no food. And it's like a lot. It's multiple. It's not just once or twice or 3 times a day. I'm talking over 8 up to maybe 17 times a day, which is what happened to me the first time. Like you are literally by the toilet. You are throwing up so hardcore, but there's nothing in you. And one of the biggest signs and indicators is that you can't keep a sip of water down. At least for me. I know people have some slightly different experiences, but for most people who have HG, that's one of the number one signs is you can't even have a sip of water without it coming back up. So you are really struggling. Your body is not functioning and it feels like it's rejecting everything. You feel dead. I mean, I don't know what other way to say it. You feel like a dead person who's laying on the floor of a bathroom and that there's nothing you can do. There's nothing that helps. They have a medical quantification of it, I think, is if you lose 8% of your body weight. So for me, that's losing 7 pounds within that first week. Because imagine even after 2 or 3 days of not being able to keep anything down, not even water, your body goes into a state of emergency or panic. And it's immediately starting to consume anything else that it has, muscle and everything else in your body, just trying to survive because you are so extremely dehydrated. So they say if it's 3 or 4 days and you really can't keep anything down and you're starting to lose weight and pretty quickly, in that kind of panic emergency state. So I think it's 8% of your body weight. So for me, that has been the last 2 pregnancies. Within a week to a week and a half, I'm down 10 pounds from my normal weight. Pre-pregnancy, normal, happy, just feeling healthy and good, 10 pounds down from that so very quickly. So the biggest thing medically is that the dehydration is the most dangerous part of this. So that's when you really do need to seek help and seek it very quickly in order to get some IVs, just to get hydration in your body and have fluids and liquids that will help sustain the baby at that point and keep the baby alive and also keep you alive. So that was a really big learning curve the first time. And sometimes it can be hard just based on the type of care you have and how responsive they are. Some OB/GYNs and some midwives are not quite aware of this condition or they don't have a ton of experience with it, while others take it very seriously and can help you get into action. And so if you're finding that people are not responding to you and you have this similar experience going on, you need to be demanding of IVs, demanding of help, and then probably some type of medication. The medication, however, takes about 2 weeks for it to work. So by the time the symptoms usually come on, you're going to be in kind of that dark depth feeling for a while. The IVs can help a little bit. The more dehydrated you are, the more nauseous you are. So that can help at least keep you alive and surviving. The hydration part is the most important, but then also it usually comes with needing to be on some type of anti-nausea medication. So both times for me, I have been on that, even though I hate taking medication. I don't even own like a thing of Advil. I just don't really like going that route. But for this, again, it's kind of a life or death thing. And I feel so thankful to have access to medication and to have those resources around because I really did need it. And I think that's exactly what it's there for. When you need it, that it's there and that it can be a helpful thing. I think maybe the harder part is that nothing actually makes it better other than time. Like there's no one thing you can eat or one thing that you can drink that will magically stay down. The medication doesn't wave away your symptoms and then you feel fine. It's this game of time. And I think sometimes that can be the most challenging part, at least for me, is that mental game and how do you keep that going strong and how do you be with yourself when things are really hard and how do you talk to yourself and all kinds of stuff, which we'll get into a little bit later. The second question is, how did you know that you wanted to go from 2 to 3 kids? So I know just from like talking to so many of you and having one-off conversations and private messages that this is something that a lot of you are thinking about or thinking through. And maybe it's because you have harder pregnancies. Maybe they're not like mine, but just hard for you in your life. And when you currently have kids, it's a whole nother thing to be thinking about taking on being pregnant, going through the process again when you know that it really does take you down. And as a mom, it's really hard to be taken down. Like moms, I feel like, and dads, of course, but moms just really keep so many things in their family running, usually. And thinking about adding more to that, whether it's adding more chaos or adding that experience of pregnancy on top of having to take care of all these other things in life can be just a really big decision. And I wouldn't say that this is something that came easily or came quickly. I really gave myself 2 years at least to be thinking about this, just in the back of my head. After June was born, I didn't have that feeling of, okay, that's definitely my last kid. I don't want to do this again. Of course, because of HD, I had that thought, like, I never want to do that again. But I also knew in the back of my head, okay, that's still an open conversation. I'm still going to think about it, not making any decisions. And I think it just took me a really long time. It took a lot of journaling, a lot of praying about it, a lot of trying to ask myself some tough questions around what's the motivation for it, both pro and cons list. And I think the easiest way to explain it is like there's 2 big parts of that decision. One was my heart, what I wanted in my heart, what I knew in my soul, what I knew about myself to be true. And for me, I knew that I have always wanted a bigger family. And whether that meant 3 kids or 4 kids. I mean, honestly, if pregnancy was not as intense for me, I would consider maybe 4 kids. Like I love being a mom. I love being a working mom. There's so much to it that just feels so much of the richness and joy in life is because of getting to experience having kids and being a mom. Having that experience has just been such a growing experience and such an amazing experience. And I feel like it helps me be more present and more aware of everything in my life, just seeing it through their eyes, seeing the ways that they're making me a better person or a more patient person. And I don't know, I just think it's a beautiful process to go through and to have that life experience. I love motherhood. I've always wanted a bigger family. I really tried to think about, okay, what do I want my life to be like? Just closing my eyes and trying to imagine myself as a grandparent. Like when I'm in my 60s and 70s, what do I imagine and what do I see? And what do I imagine when I have older kids or adult children? And what do I want that dynamic to feel like? And would there be any part of me that would regret not going for it and not at least trying to see if that was in the cards for us? Would I regret that? And so I think a lot of times in making decisions, sometimes that question of what will I regret when I'm older and when I'm looking back on my life, because when you're looking back on your life, it's so much easier to forget all of the excuses or all the reasons why you say you can't have or do or go for the things that you want to go for in life, because we all have this protective mechanism in our brain of fear and what if it doesn't go the right way or the way that we hoped, and the fear of disappointment and letdown. And I think when you're thinking about the position of, okay, when I'm looking back on my life, what will I regret? What will I be so happy that I did? And when I imagined that, I imagined a bigger family. Having 3 kids felt like that really fit more of my vision. And it's away from all of the like logistical excuses. You could also frame that question in terms of what would I be the most proud that I created in my life, or the most proud that I invested my time in? And when I thought about it like that, it is so clear for me that it is being a mother and investing and creating a family. Like that is a huge way that your creation energy is used. And I love the feeling of that. And I feel most proud of that. I feel like my pregnancies and experience being a mother have been the things that I've been the most proud that I have created, because it takes a lot of strength and it takes a lot of grit and it takes a lot of resilience and a lot of being flexible and being able to figure things out and trusting in that in myself, of my ability to figure things out. I know that looking back on my life, I would never regret at least trying to go for it, and then having this deep trust that I know what is meant for us will be there. And I had to also come to a place of peace either way, that because of my age or other circumstances or health or anything else, that if it didn't work, that I would also be okay with that. Now, I also have to be real with you and say the heart is just one part of this. And my brain, especially at first, was focused on the logic and all the reasons why it was not a good idea to do this. So there's like a full pros and cons list of logistics. Is this a smart decision or is this not? And I think a lot of times when, especially as women, we have such a great feminine energy and creation and mothering and being more in the moment. But the way that our society operates is so much more in the masculine of logic and reason and strategy and statistics and what's right and what's wrong, and living your life very linearly versus based on feel. And so I will say that the last, I don't know, probably since becoming a mother, that has been one of the number one lessons for me, is learning how to be in my feminine energy more and in my feminine rather than the masculine, and only thinking about the head versus the heart. That's been a huge growth and learning curve for me over the past 5 years. And I think that that was something that really came into play too in this decision of, okay, here's the heart and here's the logic. I will share the pro cons list because sometimes I feel like that does help to see where your brain is at and where the masculine energy is. And then also being able to look at the heart and where your feminine energies. I'll start with the list of cons because that was, of course, the first thing and the loudest thing to come to mind when I first started to think about it. Cons, definitely my pregnancy experience and knowing that the likelihood of that recurring was over 90%, that I would get HG again and have the same similar experience of 4.5 months of being in bed and out of my life. Other cons is that my business absolutely takes a hit from this. There's no way that I can sustain it, even with all of the systems in place and my wonderful team. And over the last 5 years, being able to work from a place and create these systems that really can go on without me present, like physically or virtually, that things can really be running on their own. And I've spent a lot of time creating those systems and putting them in place because I know that I'm a mother of young kids and things don't always go according to plan. But there's definitely a financial hit that happens, definitely mentally hard for me to just drop everything for 4 months. And then when I think about it over the course of 5 years and 3 pregnancies, that's been over 65% of the time, the last 5 years, that I have had to take off for medical reasons or maternity. That's all unpaid time. So that part is definitely a very big logistical component to this, but it is something to note. And all those things in that logistical category on the con side became things that I want to talk this through with Kyle. How can we be on the same team? What are different ideas? What are different solutions? And taking those things through, is this something that we could figure out versus this is a deal breaker? This is something that just won't work and there's no solutions and there's no ways that we could navigate this. And so I do feel so thankful to have a partner in life like him that also has the mindset of we can figure anything out. The mental hit, I've talked about this before, but just how hard it is for me as a person who loves control. And although I'm a very tired perfectionist, I still am very much like a control freak with a lot of different areas of my life. Although I've grown a lot, there's still certain areas like my business where it is just so mentally hard to not be able to do the things I want to do because I love my business so much and I love being a mom. I love being in my life. I love my friends. I love so much of what I have created for myself in this life that it's so hard for me to completely let it all go and be okay doing that. Like it's very much a mental struggle to be, it's okay. There's no emergencies. Nothing bad is going to happen. Everyone's going to be okay. My business will be okay. It takes so much talking down. And I will say still to this point, even as I'm starting to feel a little bit better, that's still something that I really do struggle with is that mental talk and conversation around the urgency I put on things for myself. It's all internal and in my head. How urgent I make things or the ways that I want to show up sometimes are not correlated to what my body is willing to do at that time. So that's also a thing I knew would be a thing for me. It's just, can I do that again? Can I work through that mental stuff again of giving myself more grace? And can I be patient with myself? Can I walk myself through a time where I know it's not the ideal, but am I able to still get through it and know that on the other side of it, I will be stronger, but knowing that while I'm going through it, it's not going to be comfortable. The other thing on my cons list was just the physical piece of being pregnant again. I've talked about this before, but I had herniated disc in my back that happened when June was about 7 months old, where I couldn't pick her up. I was in a back brace for months. I had to do intensive PT for about a year. And all of that was related to pregnancy, just not being able to have a core. And I already had a predisposition for it anyways. And so there's a lot of factors that led up to that. The physical part of this could be totally a bad decision for my own physical health. If going through another pregnancy with having a herniated disc, even though I have worked so hard to get it to a point of building more muscle and being strong and having it be really stable and not going backwards, that there still is a risk of that where I may not be able to hold my baby or kids or have these physical injuries for the rest of my life. Something I just needed to be aware of. Am I willing to do the work around that? Am I willing to still continue to do the exercises and all the stuff I need to do for my back and my core to be healthy? Obviously, have not been able to do any of those things while I've been flat on my back in my bedridden era. And so there could be a chance this could make my back worse. And then also some hilarious things on my cons list, like we don't have another bedroom. Our kids will have to share a room, the two older ones. And at first that was freaking me out. And then now I'm like, it doesn't matter. We're going to figure it out. And now there's 3 or 4 different options we can think of rearranging stuff. So that part is going to be fine. But I think in the initial process, that took some headspace of physically, can we do this? Okay. On the pros list, logically, I also then started reminding myself, like, but we are in a much different place and life phase than even where I was with my last pregnancy, meaning we're more settled in our house. We're not just moving neighborhoods. Like our rhythms are a little bit more settled. Noah's settled in school. We have a really strong community. That was such a pro, knowing that I have people in my life that I can call when things are hard or dark or when I need help, and that I don't feel ashamed to ask them. Or I don't feel like it's putting them out. I feel like they are happy to help. And that has been such a huge blessing. I think if we didn't have this really strong community, and by community, I mean like we also have 2 sets of grandparents nearby. We have aunts and uncles that also live nearby that can help and pitch in. And I knew that if stuff really went south, which it did, that we would have that support that we could lean into. And I also think it's worth saying I felt the same way about our nanny, about our childcare setup. She is so wonderful and I'm obsessed with her. I just love her so much. And she's part of our family. And knowing that my kids were going to be in good hands if things did go wayside, which they did, was also something in the back of my mind. Like, I know that my kids would be loved and taken care of, and they would be fed and they would be taken to where they needed to go. And that was something that was really helpful for me to think through. On that same side of things, pros, also thinking through my husband, thinking through what his capacity is, and just knowing and always feeling so thankful for this, but like truly thinking through if things did completely hit the fan, would he be able to handle everything in our life? And he can. And I know that because of the first time that we went through this together. But now we have even more stuff going on and even more logistics and even more things that we're doing as a family and together. And I think that's a huge component. For me, it was one of the bigger reasons to go for it, because I know that I married such a strong and capable guy. Like he can figure it out. And that gave me a lot of peace. I know that is not always the case in marriages. And so for me, that was like a bigger factor. And he also wanted 3 kids. So he was willing to be in for that work. He knew what it was like. He's done it before. He knows the amount of stress and extra pressure and load that he would have to carry. And he was fine with that. And so that could be very different than other people's circumstances. But for me, that was a huge part of this. Okay, the other part of this is thinking about my age. And I think this is a very real thing when you're a woman. So I had a lot of questions, more than I ever have. I had like, I don't know, at least 15 people ask me, like, how old are you? That's one of the questions for this episode. I'm 38. I started my business at 26. I got married at 30, almost 31, we'll say. I turned 31 like a few months later. We had our first baby, Noah, when I was 33. So we were married for 2 years and then had Noah. And then my kids have been 2.5 to 3 years apart. And this is on purpose. I knew I didn't want to have kids any sooner than 2 years apart. Me and my sister are exactly 2 years apart. And I just think there's so much more when you have like 2 kids in diapers and just the chaoticness of it, while also trying to run my business and recover physically from these intense pregnancies, that I knew I needed a little bit more spacing, a little bit more time, but also wanting to have my kids not so spaced out, because it does take so much from me physically, mentally, emotionally. And there's this real component of age. So we had Noah at 33. June was born when I was 35, almost 36, because she was born in August, and I am an August birthday too. And now this third baby will be born when I'm 38, almost 39. So there is that physical timeline of if I was much younger, maybe I would have waited a little bit longer with this decision of do we go for 3 kids or just stay happy with 2? There was that ticking timeline in the back of my head of if we're going to do this, this is the time. It's not going to get easier as I get older. I would like to ideally be done having kids by the time I'm 40 for a whole new decade ahead of that. And so it felt like this is the time and we'll see. And I know because of my age, it's a higher risk pregnancy. There could be more potential complications, but I choose to not try and absorb that and really just focus on being the healthiest I can be, even though that's truly laughable at my experiences of what pregnancy actually looks like for me versus what ideally I'd like it to look like. So there's that. Yes, I am 38. How many weeks am I? So I'm about halfway through my pregnancy, which thankfully that's when I do start to feel a little bit better, or at least functional. I'm not feeling great. I'm not winning any awards at doing things during the day or feeling back to normal, but I at least can eat more often and frequently. I can eat a few different things aside from those 4 foods that I could only eat, which I'll probably never want to look at again. It's touch and go. 2 or 3 days of feeling better, 2 or 3 days of taking a lot of steps back and feeling worse. So it's just pretty inconsistent at this point. But I am due in August. So it's kind of a fun thing. I have a birthday in August. My sister does too. We've always been 1 week apart in August. And it's always been my favorite time. I love summer. I'm such a summer girl. I think a large part of that has always been August has always felt so fun. And it's been birthday season in our family growing up. And now this most hilarious thing is that now I'll have 2 August birthdays with my kids. And that feels like full circle. And I love it. And it's going to be just a party month. A lot of Kyle's family has August birthdays, and a lot of my family does. So it's going to be birthday season. And I feel so excited about that. It's hard to predict when you could actually get pregnant, when your baby will be born, but I feel extra thankful. God willing, it will be this summer. Okay, gender. Are we going to find out the gender? Yes, because I am not cool enough to just go through the experience and be surprised. I feel like I just respect it so much when people can do that. But I am not that girl. I'm just not that person. I like to know things. I like to be able to plan and predict. And I think part of it for me is that in finding out the gender, it becomes more real for me so that it doesn't just feel like I'm only just sick and in bed, but it makes it feel like this is an actual person. And then I can start to envision our family and start to envision what the dynamics might look like. And so, yes, we are going to find out. We do know, I haven't shared it yet, but we do know. And so that has given me such a boost, I think, mentally knowing there's a real baby in there and how this might be able to work in our family, even just logistically. What do we need to be ready for? And what clothes are we giving away now? And all of that. So, yes, we're definitely finding out. We know. I will share that at a later time, but I'm not cool enough to not find out and just be surprised. Okay, let's talk about some of these other great questions that came in. So, one of the biggest questions was, how did you mentally prepare after such hard previous pregnancies? And I thought this was so interesting that it's just mentally preparing, like as much as you can, knowing that this might be a likelihood. I will say a lot of the things we've talked about was it took a lot of intention of thinking through all these things and what my bigger picture was and my why was, and that vision of me when I'm in my 60s or 70s. If this is the goal that I know that I want, or at least want to try to get to, what's it going to take from me to get there? So it did require a lot of journaling, a lot of praying, a lot of letting go of control, a little bit like surrender, knowing that things were going to happen for us the way that they were meant to happen. And I truly trust and believe in that, being guided and led in my life by my faith and by my own relationship to God. That's the only way I can really describe it. Is like, how can you prepare for something like that? It just requires a lot of trust and a lot of surrender, which is something that I think has been one of my biggest lessons in life. It's not something that comes easily. It's very hard as a control freak, but that part of it was really, really big. And I know that this is mentally, the question is, how do you mentally prepare? But there was a lot of physical preparation as well that helped my mental space feel a little bit more at ease. So physically, I think in the year leading up to getting pregnant, I made it my goal to be my strongest that I had ever been. Physically, with muscle, with strength, with my back. That was all such a motivator. If I knew that this potential of going through another pregnancy, that building as much muscle as I could, I think the big motivator was my back and wanting to protect that and feel healthy and I can move. And that was a huge reason why I got into Pilates, was so much about core and back and strength. And then knowing as you get older, your muscle declines rapidly every year as you age. So that was a huge priority for me, both in trying to replenish myself from the previous pregnancies and get back to a baseline of where I was before kids with my strength, very specifically. But then it also to build up even more than I'd ever have, so that I would have more stores of muscle in case I did get so sick and my body needed to start consuming my muscle for energy, which it did. I have now lost all of that muscle that I've worked so hard to build, but that's okay. And I think that would be true even if I didn't have hyperemesis. That would be my mentality, anyways, of thinking I've had two kids before my third, instead of just being like, well, I don't know, my body's not strong yet. I don't have time. But that was a huge thing. I want to get back to a really good place before trying to do this again. I would say that with strength, with workouts, but I would also say that with my food as well. I took almost a year of replenishing, like doing blood tests of what my body was low in, which minerals I needed, which electrolytes I needed, what vitamins I needed. And I went hardcore on that for a year, all with the mentality of replenishing what I had lost from previous pregnancies, because it takes such a toll on your body internally, like cell by cell. And then also just trying to build up even more stores of those things, because I know that I would become so depleted. And that really helped my mind. I will also say that I know this from the last pregnancy experience. I knew that I would need something for my mind to focus on if it was going to happen again. That I learned this big lesson last time, that having something that I was learning, doing at my own pace, like a self-guided course or some type of workshop or something that I wanted to learn about but never felt like I had the time, having something like that to focus on while I was sick and while I was in bed. And this is, for me, this is not possible until after week 12. But in that time when I do feel like I'm coming a little bit more alive, I'm able to keep water down, at least having and finding some sort of workshop or program or something that I wanted to be learning that I could do at my own pace and time was so helpful for my mental space, rather than just what I was doing in the beginning, which I could only watch movies on Netflix on my phone. Like that was the capacity I had in the first trimester. But then moving towards something that felt more healthy or productive, or felt like my brain was being used in ways that might help me later, or might help me grow, or might help me in some way, or things, maybe just something I wanted to learn. So picking out something like that. And then also knowing that mentally what we need as humans is connection. And so I may be in bed, I may not be able to be doing anything in my normal life, but I can be voice noting with my girlfriends. And they were all checking in on me anyways, and using that time to really be talking to them a lot more than what feels like I can do in my normal life when my schedule's more packed with other things. That was like a time, and still is a time, for me to be focused on my friendships and girlfriends and community and feeling supported by them, and also being able to invest in what's going on for them in their lives. And so mentally, that was also a huge help. Maybe this will help if you know somebody or if you are going through a physically hard or challenging time, thinking of things that do support your mind in that way. And then I will also say, I shared in my email a couple weeks ago, but meditation was something that after the first trimester, I felt like I could do because I couldn't do much else. I still couldn't listen to podcasts or audiobooks, but I could plug my little AirPods in and do a meditation. And I got into this rhythm of doing it at night because I couldn't read anymore. It made me too nauseous. So I've been doing a meditation now every night for months, and it's been so great. It's been so helpful and so nice to have that tool and to feel like I was using that time for good to help strengthen my mind in a time when I really needed it. So those things really helped me mentally. I mean, obviously, this was very hard and challenging, and I would cry most nights going to sleep, especially in those earlier days, because it was just so physically painful and so hard. And I missed my kids and I missed my life, but finding those little things to help keep me going and feeling like I had some type of purpose, even though everything else that usually gives me purpose was like off the table. This next question is, I think, such a huge part of this experience for me. And it came in as a question a lot. So I have a feeling it's something that a lot of you may be going through, be thinking about going through, knowing how it all went down. And that was, how did my kids do with this? So that was one of my fears, I will say, on the cons list, like how this will impact the kids that I already have. My time, my energy, but especially having a mom that's out of it for months and months at a time. Are they going to be okay? Are we going to make it through this? Are they going to be damaged? Is this going to be traumatic for them? So here's how it went. Noah, my son, is 5. He has a really hard time when things change in his routine. So the very beginning of all of this was a little tricky to try and explain what was going on. And also the fact that we didn't tell our kids for a couple weeks that I was pregnant, just because it's so early. Like, you hadn't even been to the doctor yet. It hadn't even been confirmed. And so I didn't want to bring them into that process until we knew what was going on, until we had some sort of plan or rhythm. And that the time that I found out, it was like right before Christmas. So that was a little bit of a blessing in that, like, the schedule was different anyways. He was out of school. There was just all the excitement and commotion. Like, I was out for Christmas. I was out like December, January. Man, I was just not even a part of life. But luckily, Kyle had some time off and they were hanging with grandparents, and our schedule was just a little different at that time. But then when it was time to go back to school, there was a lot of change. But for me, I think the thing that really saved us is that the people that we had stepping in, he loves them and feels so comfortable with them. So my best friend, they live a couple blocks from us, and we have other really close friends in our neighborhood now, which is such a blessing. And part of the reason why we moved here a couple years ago in the first place was to have that sense of community where my kids know their families and know their kids and trust them and love them and feel really comfortable at their houses. And so that was a huge blessing and huge help to us. And that he loves our nanny, Marina, and loves his grandparents. And so the people who did step in, I feel like it was very comforting for him because he knew that there was still so much love and so many people around that he's used to. And so it didn't feel like this complete change to things. So some new routines we had to learn and figure out, but ultimately it became this really good practice in empathy for other people and being aware at 5 years old of people outside yourself. So we came up with these little things that we could do and ways that we still could try and hang out a little bit. He understood mama is sick and there's a baby in her tummy, and he was really excited about the baby part of it when we eventually were able to tell him. I think he was able to wrap his brain around, like, mom's in bed all the time. She's really sick. You can come visit whenever you want. So after school, he would just run upstairs and start just jumping on my bed, even though I'd tell him it would make me more, more sick. But I could ask him questions about the day, and he would make me little Lego figures and random things from his room and bring them in on my nightstand. My nightstand was filled with all these little treasures. It was so sweet. That was his way of connecting to me. And we'd talk for a couple minutes, and then he would go play, and then he'd come back later. Also, for him, this is what I called my kids' screen time era. Like, we got to watch more of his favorite shows and way more movies. We usually do movie nights on Friday nights, but he got to watch like a lot more of those. He could have snacks whenever he wanted, and it wasn't me just saying, here's some peppers, here's the carrots. He got to eat pretty much whatever he wanted, which I think he loved. He got to have special sleepovers at Kyle's parents' house on the weekends with the cousins. So that felt special. Like, trying to create ways for him to feel both normal and that this was kind of a special time, like a different time. Also, that he got way more dad time, which I think he loves in general. And it was really beautiful to watch. They loved having more time with their dad. It was such a such a great thing for both of them, I would say. So with him, it was slightly easier because he could understand what was going on, and he knew that it wouldn't be forever, but just for right now. He would often say, Mommy, when you feel better, I probably won't get to watch as many shows, right? And be like, right. I probably won't get to have as many treats. I'm like, yeah, probably. So he kind of knew in his own mind that that was going on. Now, for June, she's 2.5. It was a much harder time, especially emotionally for me. She has been my girl that's just so connected, so snuggly. Like, the joke in our family is that she just wants to go back inside my body. She just always wants to be close and is always next to me, and we are inseparable. So she had a much harder time because she's younger and she can't understand why the door is closed and why mom is in bed and just wants mom still to do everything and be with her. And she would cry outside my door, even though she loves our nanny and loves other people that came in to help and support us. It wasn't the same. So it was heart-wrenching. I would cry on the other side, just listening to her cry for mommy, that she missed mama. And so we came up with she could come visit whenever she wanted, so multiple times a day. Then it became hard for her to leave. She didn't want to leave the bed, but I would let her come in and snuggle. And then we had this little routine of when Kyle would come home from work, and while he was making dinner, that she would come up in my bed and we'd hang. I was too nauseous to read her books, which was also hard for her to understand and really sad to say no to your kids wanting to read with you. But we would snuggle, talk, and hang out, and both kids would come in at that time. So that was like our new little ritual. I eventually came to the fact she's probably not going to remember this at 2.5. Their memory doesn't quite hold and store those things. So that did make it easier that she really won't remember this time, I hope. It's been hard. And obviously, the transitions, we've had a couple weeks where our nanny was gone or on vacation, or had to be somebody that we didn't know. And those are very hard weeks for a lot of different reasons. And it's also hard because I'm around the house, but I can't help or do anything. So to have somebody else helping, but I'm still there, needing to come down at random intervals to try and eat or try and get water and trying to survive while also having my kids around, it's very confusing for them. So eventually, I think we all adjusted as needed. But there was another question that came in of how did I manage missing my kids? So aside from having those times they could come in whenever and snuggle, they could come in whenever and talk, because I wasn't doing anything. It's not interrupting me. And it was so nice to see them and to feel their energy. Their energy as kids are just so innocent and happy and hopeful. So that was really important, I think, for me mentally. But in the context of this question, I'm getting ready for a season of traveling a lot more with work. What things did you do with them, or ideas of how to stay connected to them when you maybe physically can't be there or can't do your normal rituals? So I would say we've always had this, and I know I've posted this on Instagram, but our little affirmation that we say in the morning, and what started with Noah when we were driving him to school, where we say, I'm brave, and he repeats it back. I'm brave, I'm strong, I'm kind, I can do anything I set my mind to. I'm going to have a great day. And it's because we've been doing that with him every day before he goes to school or every weekday. That was like our way of parting or saying goodbye. And then as June has gotten older, there's the process of dropping Noah off at school where it's like a physical goodbye. He came up with it like a hug, a kiss, a nuzzle. And then we say, I love you, like pointing to your eye, your heart, and the other person's heart. I love you. That was his quick, like preschool drop off ritual. And so then it became this combined thing. And then June added a few more elements. So we have ended at this place where we have this kind of elaborate, like parting ritual. And so that was something that really helped, I think, for both of us, like for both Noah when he's leaving for school and someone else is taking him and picking him up, that he knows that I gotta like say my goodbyes. So we would do the whole process like hug, kiss, nuzzle. And then June added in a high five and a thumbs up. And then the I love you. And then we do the affirmation. And then it's like, have a great day. And I think for both of them, it's really comforting. You feel connected, you feel loved. And that was a huge part of it, I think, for us. Whenever June had to leave my bedside to go back to be with somebody else, that we ended up going through the whole routine. And I feel like that brought her like a sense of comfort and that things were maybe still normal. But I'm trying to imagine maybe if it's not this scenario, but it is traveling for work, like what sort of new little rituals could you do? So maybe that's timing them every day at a certain time. Maybe it's breakfast or maybe it's dinner or whatever works for you. When I've had to travel before, this is an idea from Daniel Tiger. Shout out Daniel Tiger fans, of making a little paper chain where it's however many days you're gone, there's a little paper chain so they can keep track of when you're going and when you're coming, and there's excitement that builds up. I know people that will just get them a little memento, a little token of something when they travel. Just having something that you do when you leave for those trips or something that you do when you get back that is a predictable ritual for them to know and feel comforted by. I think that's really what it is at the end of the day. They know that they're loved. They know that you're thinking of them. They feel connected to you in some way. And it doesn't have to be only physically or only in person or what you usually do. It could be something really small that might mean a lot to them. So it might mean testing out a few different things or ideas, or even asking them to come up with some ideas, asking your kids what would be fun to do, what kinds of things they get excited by, or your reintegration routine, like when you do come home. So there were like a few more questions that came in, but I feel like these were the biggest, most asked, frequent questions. And I am more than happy to answer anything else and share more. But I just also want to thank you all for being so wonderful through this process and so patient with me of not being able to show up and not being able to create or produce like I normally do, and that you're all still here anyways. And it very much feels like a big family in a lot of ways. Like I know so many of you have been around for so many different life changes and so many different things that I've gone through. And I just think that's such a beautiful thing. And more than anything, I've just been reminded how special that is to have people in this community that really, truly do have these hearts of gold and do care about not only my work, but me as a person and our family, and supporting that in all the ways that you do, whether that is financially through programs or subscriptions, or you're in the cooking club, or you're doing Simply Real Life, or when you click on a link of things that I love and it's an affiliate link, like just feel so blessed to be navigating this season of motherhood and having young kids with trying to balance running my business and trying to figure out through a very messy way how to do both of those things and do them with intention and do them with all of my heart. And to know so many of you are in similar boats or times and places, or you're a mom or want to be a mom. We all go through a lot of different things, I think, chasing our dreams and building and creating these things, whether that's our families or it's through work or it's through relationships in our lives or communities. We're all just doing our best. We're all human. We all go through these very intense seasons. And I think talking about the ways that we get through it, or the things that have helped us, or the methods of support and all the other things that are unseen, I think it's like really good to bring them to light so that we know that we don't have to do everything alone. Oftentimes that's impossible. But when you are a driven, motivated woman, which I know that that's like 99% of this community, that there's just a lot of times where we have to kind of figure it out and do the best we can. And so that has very much been the summary of these last 4.5, 5 months almost. And it's just been so nice to be felt seen and heard and not keep this a secret and just be able to share and talk about these things that are very much real life, very much not polished and not what you see curated, but just kind of the real inside of it. So thank you for being here. Thank you always for listening and for sharing this and just sending me messages and letting me know if there's things that have really helped you along the way that I've shared or talked about. It just always means the world to me. So thank you so much. And we are definitely going to be taking a little bit of a break because my energy is all over the place, up and down and not predictable. But I'm hoping by April that we'll kind of be back to a more steady cadence on the podcast here. If you think of other questions for the podcast, other episodes you want to hear, send me a message at Simply Real Health on Instagram, and I can't wait to connect with you. If you enjoyed this episode and want more like it, make sure you're subscribed to the Simply Real Life podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and maybe share it with a friend or two. That would mean the world.